I teach negotiations and corporate law at Harvard Law School and also at Harvard Business School. And I'm kicking things off here this morning to try to, as it says, set the stage for productive negotiations. Give you a toolkit which you can use today, tomorrow, as you go back into your real situation starting next week, right away, and hopefully get to better outcomes, both in the short term and in the long term. So some specific tactics. How do you achieve win-win or interest-based negotiation? Number one, meeting in person. The moves we'll talk about are much better done in person than they are over the phone, clearly better than email, clearly better than texting. That's the worst. But many negotiations at even the highest levels are done by text messaging, not so good, right? Getting in person, being in front of each other can build trust. Manage the physical space. So for example, sit on the same side of the table as your counterpart. That communicates volumes about your willingness to work together on the problem. Here's a fun example from a couple months ago. This is a board, well-known company, evenly divided on a major decision. Tensions are running high. They have a board meeting, so I'm called in to, quote, moderate. That was important. I'm not going to be on one side or the other, but I'm called by one of the purple people. So here's the move that's, I think, quite important. The board members are asked to, they're meeting at the law firm, not at their own company, but at the law firm because the tensions are so high. Law firm's in DC. And they're asked, because it's not their normal boardroom, to pick up their name card and put it where they'd like to sit. What's the mistake? What's going to happen?
Fight for space.
Fight for space. Let me show you. Here's the board table. This is probably not drawn to scale, but you can get the point. And so outside counsel shows up first, right? He's the service provider. He shows up first, so he's sitting there. Here are some of the yellow people start to show up. There's one of them shows up there. Purple guy shows up, picks up his card, goes there. Yellow guy goes there. Purple guy goes here. What's going on? This is, I think the unfortunate mistake, and I should have been aware of this myself and maybe advised outside counsel on this, was to say, you pick up your name card. I mean, it seems so innocuous, but when that happened, you get this dynamic. So the paralegal shows up, sits there. Another yellow person shows up. Now, at this point, I show up, and I'm told by outside counsel to sit next to him. Okay, so I'm sitting there, but I do notice this dichotomy between the purples and the yellows. And notice, I was brought in by the purples. I don't know if I said that correctly, but I was brought in by the purples. So I'm sitting on the purple side. Yellow guy shows up, purple guy, and pretty soon it's exactly like this. This is it. This is the board, and they're now about to begin the meeting. Now I'm thinking, what am I going to do here? This is bad. Because at least two things. One, it's not conducive to a meaningful discussion. It's going to be a fight, right? And you don't want to frame it that way. And two, I was brought in by the purples, right? And I'm sitting on the purple side of the table. How credible can I be to the yellows having sat on the purple side of the table? I've lost my credibility even before the meeting has started. I should not have let myself get in this position. But I think we've all been in this position where you see the physical space set up in a way that's not conducive to a good exchange. Well, what might you do?
Distributive negotiations can be thought of as value claiming. The basic assumption is that my goals directly conflict with your goals. Imagine you want to sell me a car. You have in your mind the least amount that you're willing to accept. Let's say $5,000. Now you don't tell me that, but you know in your mind you're not going to let this car get away for less than $5,000. Now, I'm the buyer, and I'm interested in this car, but I know I can't pay more than $8,000. Well, we can draw this out, and we can see here that there's my reservation price, there's yours, and we have what's called a positive bargaining zone. That is, the deal should be reached because the most I'm willing to pay is greater than the least amount that you're willing to accept. But of course, you as the seller would like to push me toward my maximum amount. You'd like to get as much as you can. But on the other hand, I would rather push you to your reservation price because, again, this is, as I said, a value claiming type of negotiation. I want to spend the least amount that I can. You, of course, want to extract as much value as you can out of me.
If one wants to put an umbrella concept around negotiation, it seems to me it's this one. Every negotiation is a mixed motive process. That in the negotiation process, we actually have to manage two different voices inside of us that are not the same. One voice is saying, look, this is an opportunity to get all that you can get. If you make the right moves here, if you're shrewd enough, you'll be able to bring value to your side of the table, and you need to do that for your business. You need to do that for your client. This is a world that is extraordinarily competitive. And then there's another voice inside of us that says, hold on just a second. If you compete too hard and too fast and too much, you may never get to negotiate with this person again. And we're about the business of long-term relationships and negotiations over and over again. So there has to be in the negotiation some element of cooperation. There has to be some willingness to give. There's got to be something where we allow the other side to leave feeling very, very good about this result as well. There has to be a cooperative mode, and those are the two voices that shout inside your mind during this process. And as you think about your strategic moves in the process, they are likely to be on one side or the other. Is this a competitive move or is this a cooperative move? Is this a move that's leading to my capturing value, which I'm charged to get? Or is this a move that somehow is going to envision this relationship in such a way that it can happen over and over again? The moves will all reflect where we are on that particular chart. If you look down here at the bottom, and this is just the 40-hour course in a box, we really have two different approaches to negotiation. The top one here, called competitive negotiation, in most negotiation terminology would be the world of distributive bargaining. It would be assuming we have a fixed amount of value and your goal is to get as much of it as you can. That naturally turns into a competitive enterprise. The other side, we have a world of cooperative negotiation, or what we'll call integrative bargaining, and that has as its orientation a sense of doing some things so that value is created, and if we have more value, it's easier to share. Now we could spend hours and hours looking at each of those, but for our purposes today in this kind of abbreviated version of things, I just want you to get a sense of that tension and the fact that that tension gives you choices. You don't always have to do it the same way. In fact, one of you was talking, we talked about the prisoner's dilemma, about the externalities. And the reality is that people who negotiate do have long memories. We remember the last time we dealt with you, and if it was a pleasant experience, I'll tell 6 people, I think, on average. If it was an unpleasant experience, I'll tell about 45 people. And so there are externalities to this. The reality is, it may not be the mob, as in our circumstance a moment ago, but there are some things out there that feed in and put all of this in a context, and so it becomes pretty important as we make that decision.